Oklahoma is the land of second, third, and last chances. Who were the people that made it so? The Red River Institute, JohnJDwyer.com, me, Gwen Faulconer Lippert, and our signature sponsor, Atwoods, present Oklahoma Gold. Together with award-winning author and historian John J. Dwyer, we'll stitch the golden threads of Oklahoma history. Here now on Oklahoma Gold. Dignifying our history through the stories we share. John J. Dwyer, what is this story?
Well, this story, Gwen, is really a lot of stories. It's the story of Oklahoma from statehood to the present. And some of our listeners might have a little bit of an idea what we're referring to is the upcoming Volume 2 of the Oklahomans that picks right up where Volume 1 left off.
The award-winning Oklahomans Volume 1, and now Volume 2 is coming?
Volume 2 is coming. We've got still a little bit of a wait. I think most people that would be listening to a show like this are well-versed enough on current affairs and what's going on in the world around them to know that there are a lot of problems out there, things like shipping and supply chains and distribution and so forth. It affects things like books, too. As some people know, we were aiming to have Volume 2 of the Oklahomans released on Statehood Day this year. One of the next great Oklahoma anniversary dates is April 22nd, of course, the date of the first great land run, the run of '89, that opened up the unassigned lands, is what they were called then. There were no tribes that were on those lands at that point, and included where we are right now, Oklahoma City, basically the central part of the state, ranging from Stillwater, where OSU is in the north, down to Norman, OU, Purcell, Moore, Mustang, El Reno, Guthrie, towns like that. It was a big day in Oklahoma history for a lot of reasons. So April 22nd is when the long-awaited Volume 2 of the Oklahomans, which does pick right up where the first one left off and comes right up to the present. When I say present, at least as much present as when I finally had to hit the send button and shoot it out. So no doubt there'll be things that'll happen here, and which, by the way, was just a few days ago. We have a whole chapter on the 2020s. The chapter title of that is Pandemic.
Oh.
Probably not too original, but maybe a little bit dramatic. And then we have an epilogue even following that. So our goal is to have people read the epic and dramatic history of Oklahoma over the past century plus and not give any short shrift to that at all, but bring it up as close as we could. You know, Gwen, I had this book pretty much finished when the pandemic hit. And boy, it was going to be somewhat of a happy ending, you know. A lot of things, the economy was booming. We were energy independent again and all this. And then, of course, everything got turned upside down since early 2020. And at first, I was somewhat grieved about that, not to mention the additional work and the additional delay on the book. But as time passed, I realized that it gave me, in Volume 2 of the Oklahomans, the chance to enter into the story from some directions and angles that I otherwise might not have, because it was, as I think most of our listeners will agree, 2020 and 2021 have been not just the difficulties and challenges of normal life, which are plenty, but a whole, truckload additional ones dumped on top of that. Not to mention the fact that some of those were unprecedented and things that are not just hard things that we've had before, but some things that we haven't ever had before. All that to say that we are excited that the book is written. It's now entering the production and printing stage, and the official release date will be April 22nd. We'll actually kick it off, and I hope that many of those that are listening right now will mark this date on your calendar. The night before that, April 21st, 2022, at the Oklahoma History Center.
Oh, perfect.
We will launch with a big celebration. There were several hundred people when we did that for Volume 1 back in November of 2016, but we'll do that again in the Great Devon Hall. replete with replica of Wiley Post's Winnie Mae airplane hanging over the microphone from the ceiling.
Perfect.
So it's going to be a great night. We'll have a band there. We'll have exciting things to make it worth a trip out that night for a lot of our listeners.
Well, you say different angles, and Oklahoma Gold has been about the stories of Oklahoma history. Did you find new stories?
Well, absolutely. I found news stories, Gwen. First time in my lifetime, and I've been around, as I mentioned in the book, all or part of 8 different decades now. And first time I've seen where, wow, it took strategic planning to get toilet paper and water. and then you had to be dressed a certain way and equipped and protected, or that could be another problem. And also, and I think most of us remember those first couple of months in particular, maybe first few months, early 2020 into the spring, early summer, where it was one big question mark. And we all wanted people to tell us all the answers. We wanted the government, we wanted medicine, we wanted, leaders of all different stripes. But the reality was, other than maybe a select few that didn't share it with us, but the general public, those of us out here in heartland America, certainly, we weren't sure what was besetting us. And I think that was one of the great dramas, one of the unsettling things. And that's why it took me a while to write this additional chapter. I was getting encouragement, shall we say, from a lot of different directions to get the book finished. And it occurred to me after a few months of the pandemic, which of course was COVID, and then it was rioting, then it was racial division, then it was economic calamities, political, not just division, but hatreds. Right in the middle of it all, one of the most tumultuous presidential elections in American history, as if that was the worst possible timing for that to happen, regardless of who won and who lost, to kind of exacerbate the divisions. And so I realized that if I ready, fired, and aimed on that chapter, it could look pretty foolish. So I did take a while to put it together because I wanted to at least have enough time to get a sense of what has happened and what are we going to do moving forward and what is the outlook moving forward.
You have had the benefit of looking at our entire story from the Oklahomans Volume 1, the beginning of ancient, all the way through to the present, thanks to Oklahomans Volume 2. Well, one of the things I have appreciated so much about Oklahoma Gold is you look at history and you tie it to today. And that's how we get our thread and our golden nuggets. So I want you to, in the next segment, tell me something of history that will give me hope for today. What inspires you about our history? With John J. Dwyer, this is Oklahoma Gold. Stitching the past to the present. This is Oklahoma Gold. John J. Dwyer, you have had the benefit of looking at our entire story from the Oklahomans Volume 1, the beginning of ancient, all the way through to the present, thanks to Oklahomans Volume 2. What inspires you about our history?
Well, Gwen, I think there's struggle and challenge in all human endeavor in history, but not like in the story of Oklahoma. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people from a lot of different states, and many of them say, well, we don't even really hardly have a history, at least anything that's, interesting or dramatic enough beyond, who held what office and when a city was founded or whatever.
Dates and times.
Dates and times, facts and figures.
Yes.
And so Oklahoma has a history. In fact, I think in the introduction to Volume 2 of the Oklahomans, which, as we said, releases this coming April 22nd,
of 2022.
Of 2022. And by the way, we'll have, those that follow us, we'll have ways to order the book from February 1st on, so you can get it ordered ahead of time. But I say in the introduction, among other things, that it's one big brawling story from start to finish. We could write it in a way where, let's make it look good for the Chamber of Commerce or whatever, but the drama and the color and really the greatness of Oklahoma history is that there has been an unprecedented amount of conflict and struggle. That was one of the reasons that Governor Frank Keating agreed to write the foreword for Volume 1, was he said, this is such a great story, and the way that we approach, writing the history ourselves is that we're not sugarcoating it. We're talking about the good, the bad, and the outrageous. And yet, to see that that's been the case and that we've come through it and we have built, and I would say in not every way, but in many ways, this state is a lot better than it was in past generations. And I think Dr. Bob Blackburn, who's a hero of both you and me, yes. He's the man that back in 2005 first challenged me to write a new history of the state of Oklahoma, because he thought that, in his words, he said, there's an Oklahoma history book out there that remains to be written, John. Because I said, well, there's a million of them. He said, there's one that remains to be written. So here we are 16 years later, finally hitting the send button on the second one. But Dr. Blackburn, of course, has been an inspiration to you and me. He's been a mentor to me on this project for the last 16 years. And at the depths of the pandemic, back, I don't know, March, April, May or so of 2020, when it not only was falling on top of us like a big house, but before we even really knew what was falling on top of us, before we ever even knew what is it that we even need to find a medication for instance. One morning I woke up and I got a ping in my little Oklahoma Historical Society monthly newsletter or whatever that came across my phone. It was early enough that it was still dark, and I opened up and there was a message from Dr. Bob. And I actually emailed him afterwards. I said, I just want you to know that was a great encouragement to me, and I bet it was to a lot of other people. You're speaking words of knowledge, wisdom, and an overarching view and understanding and discernment of our history in this state. This is what Dr. Bob wrote in the depths of the pandemic early on to his followers in Oklahoma Historical Society. Oklahoma has overcome many tough times, including the Dust Bowl, Great Depression, Penn Square Bank collapse and recession of the 1980s, deadly tornadoes, and the Oklahoma City bombing. Oklahomans will answer this latest challenge and be stronger. Now that puts starch in my shirt that day to go out and to not give up. So you say, well, all right, yeah, we've overcome all these challenges. What were some of those challenges? Where have we been before? I come to the conclusion, Gwen, that we enjoy our history, we want to make history and all, but we don't really want to live through it. We want to be comfortable in front of our, TV sets watching our favorite team or, whatever it is we do in our leisure. We don't want to be part of history. We just want to read it. Well, in this case, we've been given an opportunity, and I hope all of us listening right now will realize that. We have been cast into the fulcrum of Oklahoma and American history. And our grandchildren and great-grandkids, at some point, they're going to know we were in the middle of it. And some of them are going to ask, well, what'd you do about it? Well, that's my challenge through this book. We look back what it was like to feel the scalding flames of Greenwood in 1921 Tulsa, choke on the Dust Bowl, go into battle with America's first black Marine, liberate Dachau with the Thunderbirds, feel the world shake as the Murrah Building collapses on top of you. Shield your students with your own body as an F-5 blows down your school on you and them. It's the story of Oklahoma from statehood to the present. Oklahomans, like Dr. Bob said, we have had tough times before. We're going to read about them when Volume 2 comes out of the Oklahomans. But I want us to look at it and realize there's a chapter of Oklahoma history being written even now, and we're the ones that are going to write it. So think about that as we live out our lives.
John J. Dwyer. That's why you are Oklahoma Gold.